Welcome to West Country Wanderings and welcome to another one in my canal series. Today we're on the Wilts Berks Canal near the town of Royal Wootton Bassett in Wiltshire. This canal used to be known as the Ippy by the bargemen in the 19th century. We think that comes from the abbreviation of the town Chippenham, which this canal also passes through. Construction started in 1795 at a place called Semmington. In fact, we've actually been to Semmington on a previous video where it joins the Calne Arm Canal. And construction carried on right across the Wiltshire and into Oxfordshire, but then Berkshire countryside, hence the name, connecting up to the River Thames at a place called Abingdon-on-Thames. What we're going to do today is look at this small restored section here at Royal Wootton Bassett. As we do so, I'll tell you a little bit more about the history of this fascinating canal and the restoration projects, plural, that are going on along for much of its route. So construction completed in 1810 down at the Abingdon-on-Thames end, and the canal completely closed in 1914 at the start of the First World War. Restoration process though started in 1977, a little bit later than some of the other ones that we've seen, like the Calne Arm and the Stroudwater, which started around the late 1950s, 1960s, if not a little bit before then. So the trust, which still is going strong today, are happily to report, although they are always in need of volunteers. So that's the Wiltshire, Berkshire, or should I say Wilts and Berks Canal Trust. And they started restoration here just outside or just to the south of the town of Royal Wootton Bassett in 1995. So in all, we've actually come across this canal 3 times previously in the aforementioned Latton Locks, where the canal started, where it joined the Calne Arm Canal. We also come across the canal before because it had a couple of arms. One of them was to the town of Calne, also here in Wiltshire, and I did a monthly vlog there for about 4 or 5 months ago, and I'll put a link to that video in the description because I filmed at Calne showing you the Wilts and Berks as it passes through the park in the town. One other place we've come across is on the Thames and Severn Canal. In fact, this canal also joins up with the Thames and Severn on what was known as the North Wilts Arm of the canal, and it joins the T&S at a place called Latton. Now there is actually a 4th place where I've covered this canal before here on West Country Wanderings. And that was on the video looking at the Malmesbury branch, the former GWR branch line going into that beautiful Wiltshire town of Malmesbury. Because at a place called Dauncey Lock, there is the Wilts and Berks Canal. It's currently in an unrestored state there, but it's next to a pub. The name escapes me at the moment. I'll put that in at the bottom, but I did include some clips of that there. I'll also put that in the video. We will also be covering other parts of this wonderful and fascinating canal and looking at as it's being restored. And I'll talk about some more of the other sections because it does get a little bit complex where they're going to have to reroute the canal too. But something that does look really interesting is at a place called Wantage, which is in Oxfordshire. It was in Berkshire, hence the name, as I say, when this canal was operating. I think it changed in 1974, somewhere around there. The borders changed and parts of Berkshire became Wiltshire. And in Wantage it's not really an arm. As I say, we mentioned the two arms, the one at Latton and the one at Calne, but there was another little stub going into the town of Wantage where there was a wharf, and that former wharf building is still there today, and it forms part of the Canals Trust Museum. Now, the canal's construction was no small undertaking. It actually is 52 miles long from Abingdon upon Thames to Semmington, and it contains 42 locks. In fact, there was 3 locks on the Calne Arm as well. And the chief engineer was one Robert Whitworth, ably supported by his deputy William Whitworth. I think they're related. I think that was his son. I'll check on that and put that in the usual way. Now, the reason for the closure of the canal wasn't the outbreak of First World War, as you first might suspect, because of the date of 1914. It actually closed in phases. And the major contributing factor to the closure of this canal was the destruction of the Stanley Aqueduct in 1901. So then it left only parts of the canal then navigable. After it became abandoned, further destruction was to follow because the army used it for bombing practices, and a lot of the bridges and the lock basins were completely destroyed and obliterated. Worse was to come. The M4 was planked over, where have we heard that before? Yes, on the Droitwich Canal, on the Stroudwater Canal. It's come across that. So there's obviously major plans to get the canal running back under that, and we'll talk about that a bit later. And also housing has been a major problem, particularly in places like Swindon, Chippenham, and most of all around the Melksham area. Now, the good news is that there's now some 8 miles of this fabulous canal all the way between Semmington and over at Abingdon, where it joins the Thames. It's now been completely restored and back in water again. So it's a fantastic effort by the original Amenity Trust, set up in 1997, and the people that came along afterwards in the 1990s that set up the Canal Trust as it is known today. And nearly all of that was due to the volunteers. So what sections are undergoing restoration at the moment? Well, we actually see part of it in action when I did this Thames and Severn update video. I can't remember the number of it, when we looked at Latton and walked along part of the North Wilts Canal, because we saw part of the restoration taking place there. There's also been much work taking place around the Abingdon area too. There's been a new link connecting this canal back up to the Thames again, although it can't follow its original course because of development that's taken place on that. But there is work that's taken place to get this completely reconnected at the Abingdon end of things. There's also lots of things happening in the urban areas, particularly around Chippenham and Swindon. In fact, in Swindon, it's now part of the local district plan to integrate the canals in various sections. There are 2 small sections that have already been restored there, and they're looking to expand that with new housing developments too. Much the same with Chippenham. With Melksham, it's a little bit more difficult because of the new housing that's been going on there, but there are plans to reroute it so it does indeed reconnect to the K&A back at Semmington. So we've now come to the end of the restored section here in Royal Wootton Bassett. We've gone from a place called Templars Firs, where the restored section starts, to this place here, which is at Wootton Meadows, or near to Wootton Meadows Farm. In fact, we're near a foot crossing across the main line too. I'm not sure what the timescales are to start restoration here in the eastwards direction, but if I can find that out, I'll put that in the usual way. I'm going to take my way back now in the direction of Templar Firs, do a little bit more filming there, and tell you a little bit more about this wonderful canal. Now, that isn't the only section here that's been restored in the Royal Wootton Bassett area. A bit further on the other side of the road, where the railway station used to be here in Royal Wootton Bassett, there's a farm called Huntsmill Farm. And in the field there is an aqueduct, and the course of the canal runs across there, goes across a little stream. I don't know the name of it, but that aqueduct was restored. I think it was around 2005. Sadly, of course, it lies, like we've come across on the TNS, in private land, so I haven't got access to be able to show you that today. Now, though we've spoke about where the canal starts, how it was built, where it finishes, and when it closed and why it closed, what we haven't spoken about yet is why it was built. In fact, what was the freight that this canal carried and where did it go to? Well, the main purpose of the canal was to actually freight coal, and the coal came from the Somerset coal fields, and it actually used the Somerset Coal Canal, a canal we've not actually covered yet on West Country Wanderings. Hope to put that right probably sometime next year. We'll probably do a couple of videos looking at the Somerset Coal Canal. We've seen a very small bit of it where there's a stub that is in use near the Dundas Aqueduct on the Kennet and Avon Canal. And that's how it joined, so the coal would have come down that section of the Somerset Coal Canal, joined the Kennet and Avon, and then it would have made its way in an easterly direction to Semmington and left there, that connection we saw in the Latton Locks video, and made its way along here, serving places like Chippenham, Calne, Swindon, and of course at Abingdon-on-Thames. Now we're back at the other end here at Royal Wootton Bassett, where there's a little slipway. In fact, they've acquired a boat which they use for dredging purposes. That's, we're talking about now, the Wilts Berks Canal Trust, so they can keep this section clear. They've got some other bits of equipment dotted around the other sections there, but obviously they don't have connectivity yet to move them much further along, but this one is kept here permanently. One of the things I wanted to tell you about before I close the video today, in fact before I go on to another location, is the problems they had with the maintenance of this canal. And we've come across this before when we looked at part of the T&S section as it goes above the Golden Valley and around the Sapperton Tunnel areas. The other side of the Sapperton Tunnel is water and keeping water into the canal. The problem here is, though it's clay, it's the wrong sort of clay, and they were constantly having to puddle the sides of the canal basin to make sure that the water remained intact rather than draining away and leaving the canal bed dry. Now, before I close our canal series video for today here on the Wilts Berks of Royal Wootton Bassett, I'm going to move on to a location called Tockenham Bridge. It hasn't actually been restored, but it looks an interesting place because there was a road bridge over the former canal bed there. There's also, it looks like a manor, looks like it's quite interesting. So go and have a look and see what we can find over there now. So now I'm at a location called Tockenham Bridge. We're close to, again, to the GWR main line. In fact, the Wilts Berks follows the path of that for quite some distance, and it's kind of ironic because it was the railway which sort of led to the canal's downfall. It was never a particularly busy canal, but of course the coming of the GWR mainline railway gave the canal a lot of competition. But this is what I mean earlier on by saying that a lot of the infrastructure of the canal's gone. This is a road here, got cars going up and down it, and you would expect to see a humpback canal bridge at this point, but sadly there's nothing. It's been completely infilled and the bridge is gone. But I have found something interesting just over here. So I'm now standing in the bed of the former Wilts Berks Canal at this point, and obviously there are plans to restore this section as well, but obviously that'll be some further down the line. But you can make out some brickwork here, and I'm just wondering here at Tockenham Bridge whether there was a small wharf. I'm not sure what it would have served because this is a very, very rural area. There didn't seem to be any other buildings. I think the nearest little hamlet is at Tockenham Wick, which is just over near the railway line, and there was about 4 or 5 cottages in that direction, so I'm not sure. There is a large house there. I'll put in the name of the house. I'll have to have a look at check on the OS map to see what the name of that, but may have been a wharf here at Tockenham Bridge. I've just come a little bit further west from Tockenham Bridge itself. It's a very, very pleasant section of the canal, this disused canal here. It reminds me a lot of the T&S around the Daneway area. It's very, very heavily wooded, and it's also very quiet, and it's in a deeply rural area, and nature has certainly completely claimed back the canal once again. Now, I was about to wrap today's video up when I was walking back to the road here at Tockenham Bridge When I've just found something really interesting, I've found some of the original bricks from the narrow back bridge, or humpback bridge should I say, that went over the canal at this point, and you can actually see the footings or the settings of the foundation of the bridge, which would have been blown up probably by the army here at Tockenham Bridge. Well, that's it for now on West Country Wanderings here on the Wilts Berks Canal in the town of Royal Wootton Bassett. I'm actually going to call this Wilts Berks number 2 because the first one was at Latton Locks, and I hope to cover other sections where the Canal Trust have restored the Wilts Berks back into its full watering glory, and I'll bring you further progress right here on West Country Wanderings too. I'll put in the links to their website and other bits and pieces of information, and also these other videos I mentioned where I've touched on the Wilts Berks in previous videos. Hope you enjoyed it today. If you did, then please consider a like, a share, subscribe or a comment. Love to hear from you. Till next time on West Country Wanderings, take care of yourself, look after yourself, and I hope to see you again very, very soon. All the best for now. Cheers. Goodbye.